Millionaire CEO gets into his car and hears a 7-year-old atramentous babe cogent him to shut up. He could never accept absurd why. Shut up and don't say a word. The acute articulation cut through the blackout of the parking lot like a knife. Jonathan Miller, CEO of Miller Industries, froze with the key in his hand, still al fresco his atramentous BMW. The adjustment had appeared from central the car itself. His eyes adapted to the dim interior, and he saw a atramentous babe of about 7 awash in the back seat. Her eyes advanced with fear. "They're listening," she whispered, pointing anxiously to the accumulated architecture abaft him. "Your accomplice and his albino wife. They said you'd be actuality now." Jonathan was 52 years old and had never observed that his activity would change because of an artery child. He had founded Miller Industries from scratch, axis it into a technology aggregation admired at $200 million. He had trusted his accomplice Marcus Williams absolutely for 15 years and is controlling a better Diana Foster for a decade. "How did you get into my car?" he asked quietly, sliding into the driver's bench, afterwards authoritative any abrupt movements. The charwoman adult larboard at accessible aback she left. "I hid because I saw them talking about you upstairs." Her baby eyes sparkled with an intelligence that assorted with her bedraggled clothes. "They said that tomorrow you won't be the buyer of Annihilation anymore." Jonathan's claret ran cold. Tomorrow was the affair with Japanese investors for a $400 actor merger. An affair that Marcus and Diana had anxiously organized. "What abroad did you hear?" he asked, assuming to dabble with his corpuscle buzz while watching the aflame windows of the 10th floor. "That you're actual brainless and your activity to affirmation some affidavit afterwards account them properly." The albino woman laughed and said that the day afterwards tomorrow, you'll accept to attending for audition job. The babe shrank further. "They said added awful things about you. But my grandmother consistently said that accouchement don't echo bad words." Jonathan acquainted a admixture of acrimony and article decidedly abutting to pride. This adolescent had risked her own affirmation to acquaint a complete drifter about a betrayal. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. And castigation is Jonathan Miller, because I heard them say it 1,000 times." She hesitated. "Are you activity to about face me into the badge now?" For the aboriginal time in weeks, Jonathan smiled genuinely. "No, Jasmine. In fact, you may accept adored aggregate I've congenital in my life." Through the rear appearance mirror, he saw the appointment lights activity out one by one. Marcus and Diana were apparently advancing bottomward now, assured that tomorrow would be the day they assuredly got Jonathan out of the way. What they didn't apperceive was that a millionaire CEO had aloof begin the best absurd accessory possible, and that Jasmine, afterwards alive it, had accustomed him article far added admired than any business meeting. Time to prepare. As he collection abroad from the building, Jonathan was already alpha to codify a plan. But why would a 7-year-old blow aggregate to save a man she didn't like know? The acknowledgement to that catechism would change not alone her revenge, but her complete angle on justice. If this adventure of betrayal and animus affected you, be abiding to subscribe to the approach to acquisition out how the actuality they underestimated the best would become the complete apparatus of their own downfall. Jonathan collection through the quiet streets of the city, his academician processing Jasmine's words like pieces of a addle that were assuredly starting to fit together. In the back seat, the babe remained alert, her eyes anchored on the rear appearance mirrors. "Did they say annihilation else?" she asked, befitting her articulation low. The albino woman said, "You affirmation them like an acquiescent little dog." Jasmine grimaced in disgust, "And that tomorrow you'll acquisition out that little dogs sometimes chaw their owners." The accidental animality of that book hit Jonathan like a bite in the stomach. 15 years of partnership, 10 years of complete affirmation in Diana, and they saw him as an absurd pet. "Area do you live, Jasmine?" "Nowhere in particular." She shrugged with an adroitness that bankrupted his heart. "Sometimes at the shelter, sometimes on the street. It depends if there's allowance or if the added boys aren't actuality too annoying." Jonathan chockfull at a cartage ablaze and angry to attending at her directly. "Why did you acquaint me? You don't alike apperceive me." Jasmine's eyes flashed with abortive wisdom. "Because I apperceive what it's like a back bodies anticipate you're invisible. They were talking about you like you're stupid, like you're nothing." Her articulation grew firmer. "My grandma consistently said, when you see addition accepting stepped on, and you can help, you advice because a budding time it could be you." The ablaze angry green, but Jonathan remained still for a few seconds, arresting the assignment in altruism he had aloof accustomed from a 7-year-old. 20 account later, they were sitting in an abandoned diner. Jasmine blazed a hamburger while Jonathan affected to alcohol his algid coffee. His corpuscle buzz vibrated. A bulletin from Marcus. Accessible for tomorrow, buddy? The Japanese are activity to adulation our proposal. Your activity to retire rich. Jonathan showed the awning to Jasmine, who laughed softly. He's got some nerve, doesn't he? He's lying to your face and still putting on a blessed face. Marcus has consistently been like that. Charming, convincing, Jonathan typed an affable reply, appearance the acrimony baking central him. Diana, too. She knows my agenda bigger than I do. She has admission to aggregate in the aggregation and your activity to let them fool you tomorrow. Jonathan smiled absolutely for the aboriginal time. No, Jasmine, but they can't apperceive that I know. Addition bulletin arrived, this time from Diana. Jonathan, I've advised the final contracts. Aggregate is complete for signing. Affirmation me as you consistently have. The aloofness of that message, bearded as affection, fabricated Jonathan's abdomen churn. For 10 years, Diana had been his confidant, the actuality who organized his life, who knew his schedule, his passwords, his fears. Do they apperceive things about you? Asked Jasmine, beating her ketchup decrepit fingers. They apperceive everything. Coffer passwords, aggregation accounts, area I accumulate important documents. The consequence of the betrayal was alpha to bore in. They've had years to prepare. But you've had years of actuality on them too, right? Jonathan chock-full with a bottle center to his lips. Jasmine was right. 15 years of partnership. 10 years of controlling assistance. He knew their secrets as able-bodied as they knew his. Marcus' abstruse affairs with competitors that he anticipation no one knew about. The aberrant benefit arrangement Diana had created for herself. The emails he had apparent by accident. The conversations he had overheard aback the anticipation he wasn't advantageous attention. You accept a actual aciculate mind, Jasmine. My grandmother acclimated to say that aback you accept nothing. You apprentice to pay absorption to everything. She wiped her easily on her napkin. They anticipate you're stupid, but you're not, are you? Jonathan smiled, activity article he hadn't acquainted in years. Achievement alloyed with determination. No, I'm not. His corpuscle buzz rang. Marcus, no agnosticism absent to affirm some last-minute detail. Consolidate the final trap. Jonathan answered in the friendliest articulation he could muster. Jonathan, I'm animated you got there. Diana and I are actuality finishing up the aftermost preparations. Are you comatose well? Tomorrow will be a big day. I'm great, Marcus. I can't delay to see how it all unfolds. It'll be perfect. Affirmation me, we've taken affliction of everything. All you accept to do is appearance up an affirmation area Diana tells you. The airs in Marcus' articulation was about palpable. They absolutely anticipation they had bargained Jonathan to a boob who would artlessly hunt the script. Afterwards he afraid up. Jasmine watched him closely. You're planning something, aren't you? Your eyes attending different. Every chat of contempt, every lie bearded as concern, every affected smile from the aftermost few months began to accomplish sense. Marcus and Diana hadn't aloof betrayed his trust. They had absolutely underestimated his adeptness to action back. What those two didn't apperceive was that years of architecture businesses had accomplished Jonathan an axiological lesson. The best strategies aren't loud, they're silent. And while they anon acclaimed their victory, he was about to about-face their heirs into the actual allurement that would abort them. The abutting morning, Jonathan woke up with an accuracy of apperception he hadn't acquainted in months. Jasmine was sleeping on the active allowance couch, captivated in a complete he had begin in the closet. For a moment, he watched the adolescent who had absolutely afflicted the advance of his activity in a distinct night. His corpuscle buzz vibrated. A bulletin from Diana at 6:15 a.m. Good morning, boss. I've been at the appointment aback 5 o'clock, accepting aggregate ready. The Japanese are accession at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You aloof charge to affirmation me and affirmation area, I acquaint you as always. Jonathan smiled bitterly. The aforementioned Diana, who formed added to ensure he absent aggregate, was assuming to be an adherent mother. You're planning something, said Jasmine, addition out on the sofa. Your eyes are different. Like aback my grandmother begin out addition was lying to her. I charge your help, Jasmine. Could you go aback there today and accept to added of their conversations? The babe sat up aback serious. That's dangerous. I know. That's why I'm activity to pay addition to assure you. Jonathan had already fabricated up his apperception during his Hawkeye night. I apperceive a clandestine investigator, Gabriel Torres. He acclimated to assignment for me blockage backgrounds on big clients. Gabriel answered on the additional ring, his articulation blubbery and familiar. Jonathan, what a surprise. I anticipation you'd abandoned about me afterwards they concluded my arrangement after most year. The irony did not escape him. Gabriel had been let go by Marcus and Diana, who claimed account cuts. Now Jonathan accepted the complete reason. Gabriel was too acute and asked two abounding questions. Gabriel, I charge you to apperceive that your adjournment was not my decision. Blackout on the added end. Again a low, dry laugh. I ample as much. Marcus never admired bored allurement, annoying questions. What do you need? 2 hours later, Gabriel was sitting in Jonathan's kitchen, attractive at Jasmine with a admixture of account and concern. He was a 45-year-old man, a above-badge officer, with scars on his easily and eyes that absent nothing. So, this little detective bald-headed, a $200 actor accumulated conspiracy. Gabriel befuddled his arch in awe. Jasmine, you accept a accustomed aptitude for this. My grandmother consistently said that aback you accept nothing. You apprentice to accept to everything, she replied, bitter off a allotment of toast. Gabriel pulled a book out of his backpack. Jonathan, while Jasmine was extenuate of your company, I was investigating a few things on my own. I never admired how I was fired. His fingers slid beyond the screen, complete spreadsheets and documents. Marcus and Diana aren't aloof traders, they're thieves. The affirmation was devastating. Apprehensive transfers, affected contracts, audience that existed alone on paper. For 2 years, they had siphoned added than $5 actor from the company, creating a circuitous arrangement of carapace companies. The alliance with the Japanese isn't about growth, Gabriel explained. It's about money laundering. They charge you to affirmation to validate the attendant transfers. Afterwards they abolish you and aggregate is clean. Jonathan acquainted a algid acrimony assent in his chest. It wasn't aloof claimed betrayal. It was organized crime. They blanket from the aggregation I congenital with my own hands, he muttered. They acclimated my affirmation to accounts their own corruption. Jasmine leaned forward. Now it gets interesting. They anticipate you're stupid, but you accept an investigator and a cute babe on your side, and they don't apperceive any of this. Jonathan's corpuscle buzz rang. Marcus, of course. Partner. I achievement you slept well. Diana and I accept in actuality aback aboriginal this morning, finalizing the aftermost details. The Japanese are activity to be afflicted with our organization. I'm abiding they will, Jonathan replied, his articulation anxiously neutral. One added thing, Marcus continued, and Jonathan could apprehend the bloodthirsty smile in his voice. Diana appropriate, that you don't charge to anguish about reviewing the abstracts today. They're absolutely abstruse, and you've consistently trusted our expertise, right? Aloof appearance up an affirmation area she tells you to. The airs was nauseating. They absolutely anticipation they could abduct $200 actor and still accomplish him feel beholden for their help. Afterwards blind up, Gabriel watched Jonathan closely. You accept 2 options. Alarm the badge now and try to prove all this in court, risking that they get abroad on technicalities, or let them adhere themselves. Go to the meeting, but not as the victim they expect. Go as the predator they never absurd you could be. Jasmine clapped her easily excitedly, like in a movie. You pretend your activity to sign, but you already apperceive everything. Gabriel smiled for the aboriginal time aback he had arrived. Exactly. And while they're adulatory prematurely, you about face them into the police, amiss with accurate evidence. His buzz vibrated again. A bulletin from Diana. Jonathan, you're the best bang-up a babe could ask for. Afterwards today, I'm abiding our affiliation will aftermost forever. The affectation of that bulletin fabricated Jonathan's abdomen churn. Diana wasn't aloof burglary money. She was amusement in the abasement she had planned for him. They anticipate I'm a affected idiot, Jonathan said, putting his buzz away. They anticipate my affection is weakness. Gabriel bankrupt his tablet, his eyes hard. Again it's time to appearance them that affection and cardinal intelligence can be a baleful combination. Jasmine jumped off the couch, her eyes animated with determination. And I can help. I can adumbrate abreast the affair allowance and almanac aggregate on your corpuscle phone. For a moment, Jonathan hesitated. She was a 7-year-old child. But again he remembered how she had risked aggregate to acquaint him about the betrayal. All right, he said finally. But Gabriel keeps an eye on you at all times. Gabriel nodded. It will be an amusement to watch those two ascertain they've underestimated the amiss people. As they planned the final details, Jonathan acquainted article he hadn't acquainted in years. The adventure of the chase. Marcus and Diana had spent 2 years architecture their complete trap. What they didn't apperceive was that in a few hours, that aforementioned allurement would abutting on them with a force that would abort not alone their plans, but their complete lives. For 15 years, Jonathan had been the trusted partner, the compassionate boss, the man who consistently saw the best in people. Today, they would ascertain that there is an abundant added alarming ancillary to kindness. The one that awakens a backbone assuredly runs out. The affair was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but at 2:05, Marcus and Diana would ascertain that sometimes the bashful lamb they anticipation they were arched to annihilation had developed aciculate fangs. And today, finally, he would use them all. At 2 o'clock sharp, Jonathan entered the Miller Industries appointment allowance, as if it were a Loof edition accustomed workday. Marcus and Diana were already there, acclamation endless of abstracts with the attention of surgeons advancing for an operation. Jonathan. Marcus stood up with a bright smile, adhering him like a brother. Animated, you're here. The Japanese are on their way and aggregate is perfect. Diana approached with a covering attaché and an affectionate smile. Boss, you aloof charge to affirmation area I apparent with chicken post-its. Affirmation me, as you consistently have, her articulation agitated that arrogant affirmation of addition who believes they are ambidextrous with a child. Sure, Jonathan replied calmly. But first, I capital to appearance you article absorbing I begin out after most night. Gabriel Torres entered the allowance accustomed to box of files, followed by 2 federal badge investigators. Marcus and Diana exchanged quick glances, but kept their smiles. Gabriel. Marcus frowned. I anticipation you did an assignment for us anymore. I do, Gabriel replied dryly. Alone now I assignment for the complete buyer of the company. Jonathan affiliated his laptop to the projector in the room. Marcus, Diana, do you bethink this conversation? The awning lit up with abundant spreadsheets assuming coffer transfers, dates, amounts. 5,300,000 embezzled in 2 years. Diana's smile faltered for the aboriginal time. Jonathan, what is this? Some affectionate of joke? Joke. Jonathan clicked to the abutting screen. Photographs appeared of Marcus entering and abrogation adopted banks, active documents, affected contracts. You created 17 carapace companies to acquit the money you blanket from me. Marcus stood up abruptly, his affectation of agreeableness assuredly slipping. Area, did you get this? This advice is private. Private? Jonathan laughed softly. Marcus, do you absolutely anticipate I congenital a $200 actor aggregation, afterwards acquirements how to assure my own interests? Diana approved to advance her composure, but her easily trembled as she captivated the folder. Jonathan, you're misunderstanding. These affairs accept altogether acknowledged explanations. Gabriel interrupted, handing an envelope to ceremony of the investigators. Actuality are the recordings of the conversations amid the 2 of them planning the counterfeit merger. And actuality, he placed an additional envelope on the table, are the adventures of 3 apparition audience you invented all accessible to a firm in court. Marcus's face was red with acrimony and panic. You can't prove anything. These are aloof accusations. Jonathan smiled for the aboriginal time aback he had entered the room. Marcus, do you bethink Jasmine? Who the hell is Jasmine? The aperture opened, and the 7-year-old babe entered accompanied by her amusing worker. Her eyes apparent with affirmation as she absolved up to the appointment table. Hi, Mr. Marcus, she said in a candid but close voice. Remember me? I was ambuscaded beneath your board after most night aback you alleged Mr. Yamamoto. Added you were activity to abduct Mr. Jonathan's company. The blackout in the allowance was deafening. Marcus opened and bankrupt his aperture several times, clumsy to anatomy words. Diana approved one aftermost card, her articulation acute with desperation. A child? Your activity to accept a artery kid over admired professionals. Gabriel pulled out his buzz and apprenticed play. Diana's articulation echoed through the allowance with clear clarity. Jonathan is a affected idiot. The day afterwards tomorrow, he'll accept to attending for addition job, and will get everything. That antic will never apperceive what hit him. Marcus's own articulation followed on the recording. 15 years assuming to be a company with that imbecile. It'll be account every additional aback I see his face aback he finds out he's absent everything. Diana burst into her chair, her face white as a sheet. Marcus punched the table so adamantine that the abstracts flew off. You bastard. You set us up. Jonathan remained calm, his articulation low but sharp. I didn't set you up, Marcus. You dug your own grave for 2 years. I aloof provided the shovels. One of the board approached. Marcus Williams and Diana Foster, you're beneath arrest for embezzlement, money laundering, and cabal to accomplish accumulated fraud. As the handcuffs clicked about Marcus' wrists, he shouted, This won't stand. I'll abort you. Jonathan stood up, adjusting his tie with his accepted calm. Marcus, you've already approved to abort me. The aberration is that I'm bigger at it than you are. Diana cried silently as she was escorted out, but Jonathan acquainted no pity. He remembered all the times she had smiled in his face while burglary his money. All the affectionate belletrist as she planned his ruin. Jasmine approached him, tugging agilely on his hand. Mr. Jonathan, are they absolutely activity to jail? Yes, Jasmine. For a continued time, Gabriel bankrupt his attaché with satisfaction. Jonathan, the Japanese can lead the affair aback they heard about the investigation. But 3 added companies accept already alleged absorbed in accepted partnerships. And my aggregation stronger than any time afterwards leeches sucking its resources. You'll acquisition out how abundant it's absolutely worth. As the allowance emptied, Jonathan looked out the window and saw the badge van active away. For 15 years, he had trusted Marcus blindly. For 10 years, he had advised Diana like family. They had angry his affection into weakness, his affirmation into stupidity. Jasmine remained by his side, watching the aforementioned scene. Mr. Jonathan, are you sad? He looked at the babe who had adored aggregate he had congenital in his life. No, Jasmine. For the aboriginal time in years, I'm at peace. Why? Because I've abstrused that there are bodies in the apple like you. Bodies who do the appropriate affair, alike aback there's annihilation in it for them. Outside, Marcus and Diana accomplished that their heirs had amount them not alone their careers, but their freedom. Central the room, Jonathan accomplished that sometimes the greatest allowance betrayal can accord you is assuming you who absolutely deserves your trust. But one catechism remained that would change everything. What makes a 7-year-old blow aggregate to save a stranger? The acknowledgement would acknowledge a affiliation that alike Jonathan could not accept imagined. 6 months later, Jonathan was in his new office, abundant beyond than his antecedent one, watching the Berghal bustle beneath from the 20th floor. Miller Industries had developed 40% to back Marcus and Diana's arrest, assuredly chargeless of the parasites that had been clarification its resources. Gabriel Agape on the door, accustomed to attaché and smiling. The latest account on our old friends. Marcus bedeviled to 12 years in prison. Diana got 8 years. They absent all their assets. Their homes were confiscated to atone the company. The law clothes that represented them banned to abide the case aback they begin out they approved to allurement witnesses. Jonathan nodded, activity a quiet satisfaction, but not vindictive. And the added victims, we begin 7 added businessmen they defrauded over the aftermost 5 years. All are suing and convalescent their losses. Marcus and Diana created an abundant bigger arrangement than we imagined. Jasmine came active and aback from the clandestine academy Jonathan had enrolled her in. His compatible was spotless, his new haversack on his back, his eyes animated with the aforementioned intelligence as always, but now nourished by apprenticeship and security. Mr. Jonathan, I got an A on my algebraic test. She coiled the cardboard proudly. Congratulations, Jasmine. I knew you could do it. Gabriel smiled, watching the interaction. It's still surreal how a 7-year-old adored a $200 actor company. Actually, Jonathan said, sitting bottomward to be at Jasmine's height. There's article you both charged to know. Article 1 began out a few weeks ago. He pulled out a binder of acknowledged documents. Jasmine, do you bethink your grandmother's name? Of course. Josephine Miller. Why? Gabriel aloft his eyebrows. Miller-like. Jonathan opened the folder, complete bearing certificates, affiliated documents, old photos. Josephine Miller was my cousin, my father's brother's daughter, whom the ancestors absent acquaintance with over 30 years ago. The blackout in the allowance was absolute. Jasmine looked from the abstracts to Jonathan, processing the information. That agency that were complete family, Jonathan said softly. Your grandmother consistently talked about you to the amusing workers about how acute and adventurous you were. Aback I started investigating afterwards that night. All the pieces fell into place. Jasmine threw herself into his arms, tears alive bottomward her face. I knew it. I knew you were different. Grandma consistently said that ancestors takes affliction of family. Gabriel austere his throat, acutely moved. So aback she warned you about the conspiracy. It was ancestors' aegis instinct, Jonathan finished. She didn't carefully apperceive we were related, but Article Central her accustomed the connection. 3 months later, the official acceptance commemoration was captivated in the aforementioned courthouse area. Marcus and Diana had been convicted. Jasmine, now accurately Jasmine Miller, wore a ablaze dejected dress and captivated Jonathan's Duke tightly. The adjudicator smiled as he acted the final documents. It's attenuate to see an adventure that begins with abomination and ends with the ancestors reunited. Afterwards at the celebratory restaurant, Jasmine looked at Jonathan with that calmness appropriate to children. Mr. Jonathan, Dad, do you anticipate Grandma knew this was activity to happen? Jonathan anticipation about the question. Canonizing how Jasmine had appeared in his activity aloof aback he bear her most. I anticipate your grandmother knew a lot added than we realize, and I anticipate she would be actual appreciative to see how you adored our family. On the aboriginal ceremony of Marcus and Diana's arrest, Jonathan accustomed 2 belles lettres in the aforementioned week. The aboriginal was from Marcus from prison, affecting attack to apologize in advance that it had all been a misunderstanding. The additional was from Diana, additionally from prison, blaming Marcus for aggregate and aggravating to comedy the victim. Jonathan tore up both belles lettres afterwards, finishing them. They still don't get it, Jasmine said, attractive at the pieces of cardboard in the trash. It's not about affectionate or not forgiving. It's about effective on and actuality better. The acumen of that adolescent still afraid Jonathan every day. 5 years later, Miller Industries had become one of the 100 better technology companies in the country. Jonathan created a scholarship affairs for accessible children, allotment apprenticeship and apartment for added than 200 accouchement annually. Jasmine, now 12, was the honorary admiral of the program. A loan allotment the beneficiaries and mentoring added adolescent bodies who were activity through agnate difficulties to those she had faced. Do you apperceive what the best day of my activity was? Jasmine asked during the program's ceremony dinner. What was it? The day I got in your car and absentatively to affirmation you. Because that day, I wasn't aloof extenuate of your company. I was extenuate of our family. Jonathan smiled, attractive at the babe who had become his babe and his greatest antecedent of pride. Marcus and Diana had approved to abort aggregate he had built, but they had aback accustomed him the greatest allowance of his life. The adventitious to ascertain that ancestors isn't aloof blood. It's additionally courage, loyalty, and actual love. He had abstrused that accurate. Animus isn't antibacterial those who abandon you. Its architecture articles so admirable and able that their betrayal becomes annihilation added than a comment in the adventure of your success. Marcus and Diana approved to abduct his company, but concluded up giving him abundant added than they could any time imagine. A daughter, a purpose, an affidavit that sometimes the cosmos uses the best absurd bodies to accord us absolutely what we need. If this adventure of family, justice, and additional affairs affected your heart, subscribe to the approach for added belief that prove that accurate achievement isn't about acquisition enemies, but about advertent the allies who accept consistently been by our side, aloof cat and mouse for the appropriate moment to acknowledge themselves.